It's January, and this month marks the anniversary of the month of my mom's passing. She passed away in January of 2022. Having both of my parents have passed away within a fairly close period of time, it has given me a jarring perspective as to how grief is different depending on the how, when, and where. It plays out differently if the person is distant, if there's a disease and you're anticipating, if they're young, if they're old. There's a whole variety of factors, and I've seen reasons of how it affects people differently. So my mom was in Washington State, and in 2021, we threw a beautiful wedding for our daughter, and my parents were super excited about coming. At the last minute, my mom got a terrible case of COVID. The short story is we really didn't think that she was going to even make it through that, but my dad nursed her back to health, and she really rallied. She was good after that. She was pretty strong. We would go for walks to the beach when I would go visit. I went in September of 2021 and checked in on her, and she was doing great. So fall of 2021, my son was in high school, and I would regularly leave my office and drive to the high school to pick him up. The reason this is important is because every day I would call my mom on the phone and talk to her on the way to the school, and then wait and pick up Isaac. And we had this regular routine. Well, the routine quickly started to become strange. And I noticed a decline in her speech and her ability to communicate with me. For a few years, I had wondered if maybe we were going to be experiencing a case of dementia or Alzheimer's with her. I didn't know for sure, but she was just very forgetful, repetitive in her communication, and the same was true in these phone calls. But because of the consistency, I started to really see a progression of decline. So in the middle of November, I realized I just had a bad feeling about how her health was. And Allie had married Jeremiah. The boys, everybody's an adult now. And I rallied the family and I said, you absolutely have to find a weekend, Allie and Jeremiah, when you can get off of work and we're all going to Washington together, because I just don't know how much longer we're gonna have. You just don't know. There was no reason at that point to think it would be short, but it felt very important. So mid-January became the date that we secured for all of us to fly there, rent the car, drive the 2 hours, and stay in the Airbnb and be there that weekend with my parents. My birthday is November 21st, and I still have the last birthday message that my parents called and sang me happy birthday, because they did it every year without fail. It's still saved on my phone. And in that voicemail, and I'm really glad it was a voicemail, they didn't catch me. In that voicemail, it was really clear that something was just not right with my mom. And fast forward just over a week, I woke up on a Tuesday and I told Dan, I absolutely have to go to Washington. Something is really wrong. And my dad was experiencing a lot of pain then, and doing the best that he could. He was in pain. He was also working, and we just couldn't get a clear answer on the phone as to what the problem was. My mom was an incredible typist. I mean, like the best of the best, right? If you go back to the day of the secretaries and they're just typing so fast, and all of the shorthand, everything. She was amazing at all of it. And she would type me out these emails that were so long and just painful to feel like I had to respond in the same way. But they were getting shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point that the words were messed up. And then the spelling was all off. And she kept saying, oh, I need a new keyboard. This keyboard is terrible. Dad's gonna get me a new keyboard. Well, that wasn't anywhere near the case. So I woke up on a Tuesday and said, I gotta go to Washington. Thursday morning, I flew up there. But I will tell you, the day before that, on Wednesday night, My mom was a huge planner. Like, she planned everything. They had all their documents in a row, and every time they would update something, she would just send it to me. I was the executor, and she just wanted to make sure I always had a copy. Well, what did I do with it? I just threw it in a file, So I had that banker's box of papers. Wednesday night, being the administrator that I am, I just had a feeling I'm gonna need all this paperwork. So I started going through it, and I found the most recent documents, and I took the staples out and I started scanning them all. The healthcare power of attorney, all of the documents that I might need while I was there in order to stand in for her. I fell to the floor in my room and just sobbed in the midst of all this paperwork. I got it all scanned, labeled to my Google Drive, so it was right there on my phone. And I got on the plane on Thursday morning, and I arrived to Sequim early. I went straight to the local medical office and asked for intake paperwork, because she'd never even been. And so I went to their house, and sure enough, I walked in, and she was with a cane, and she was barely moving and very, very confused. And it's kind of like the frog in the pot. You put them in and they don't realize that it's getting hotter. Honestly, I feel like that was the environment in which my parents were living in. And they just didn't realize that it was extreme as it was. And so I sat down with both of them and I said, we got to fill out this paperwork because I got to get mom to the doctor. So they complied, which was very unusual. So we go to the medical office. I take her with me and get up to talk to the gal at the front desk. And I said, I'm here with my mom. I need to make an appointment. I need her to be seen. And she tells me, our first available appointment is in April. Well, it's December. And I leaned over the desk and looked straight at her and I said, I just came here from California. I believe my mom had a stroke and she needs to see somebody now. And she looked at me, and I truly believe this was a miracle. And she said, let me see what I can do. And she went into the back, and apparently they have a few open slots for these types of emergencies. And she gets my mom in for the following Tuesday. I left on Saturday. It was really hard to leave them, but they were in flow of, we got to get some answers. Well, Tuesday, they take her in, they do an MRI, and by Thursday, we're finding out that she has a massive brain tumor. She went from the hospital in Port Angeles to the hospital in Seattle. They did a brain biopsy surgery. That was horrific. Talking with my dad, he's like, do I do it? Do I send her? I'm like, Dad, there's no other way we're gonna know what's really going on or the extent of what we're dealing with. So she went to Seattle, 2021. It's all still super locked down. He couldn't even be there. This is really far away. And she's there all by herself. And her condition rapidly declined. Miracle of miracles was one after another. My brother had already taken the week off between Christmas and New Year's to work on his house. Well, that was scrapped. He went and stayed with them and stayed with my dad while I'm the phone. You know how it is. It's just right there. If it rings, if it's a Washington number, I was picking it up. I was a first call for everything. My dad couldn't. He said, I don't want to do it. You need to be the first call and then you talk to me. So that was our plan. We still had our trip planned in January. And so we went up there, and if we had not gone straight to the care home, the rehabilitation center that she was then in, the kids would not have even been able to see her, because the next morning I get a phone call that they've had a COVID breakout and it's on lockdown again. The only people that can go are me and my dad. My beautiful mom, in that room when I went to visit her, she was always decorating everything. She and I love to decorate. We love to sew new pillow covers, work with flowers, play in the yard, dig in the dirt. It was all the things. So I'm sitting with her and she's talking to me very brokenly about the patio area and how I should repaint the fencing and what kind of pillows did I think would be nice for the spring. And my mom, she was an incredible woman of faith. And my whole life, I remember waking up in the morning or going to bed at night and seeing her with her Bible. And she read it devotedly. And as she sat in that bed, the distinct memories I have of her holding her Bible, she was always holding her Bible, and her thumb and her fingers just wanted to feel the paper. She couldn't read it. She couldn't understand it, but we would read to her. My sister was there. She read to her. My brother, we sang to her. And, you know, I had to come home. And looking back, that's just so hard. It was a completely different experience with my dad. He was right here in my home. And my mom, she was in the facility, the rehabilitation center, though she was visited, you know, the morning that she passed away and the night before, you know, the team is calling me, we're getting closer. And to be on call like that, it's super hard. And I know many have experienced that as well from a long distance. And I'll never forget where I was or what I was doing or when that phone call came. And it was just horrifying. From time of diagnosis to death was very sudden. January 30th of 2022, she passed away. And after that, you know, I know that I just entered into taking care of dad mode, and didn't really grieve mom in the same way that after my dad passed, then in October of 23, wow, it's all just been a hit like a train. In the months and the years that follow, I don't know that it gets easier. I've heard it just gets different, and I believe that that's true. It just gets different. I'm so thankful for the strong, unwavering faith of my parents and their love for me, and the assurance that I have that I know that I will see them again someday. I know that we're all headed to heaven, and I'm so grateful for the life and the legacy that they left, the life that they lived, and the legacy that they leave in all of their family.